Hello and welcome to our watercolor class today at the Rum River Art Center. I'm Mary Leah Marshall and I'm here with Tom Pace, and we're welcoming you all here today. It's so great to see you. Today we're thinking about wildflowers, and I've had a lot of fun going to different parks and trying to do some photography of different wildflowers that I've found, and it's just been fun working with them and discovering them along the trails and roadsides. So welcome, and we're so glad that you're all here today. I took these pictures and I put them in a little bit of a collage. We've got the Black-Eyed Susans. I don't know what that one is. Maybe one of you knows what that is. This is Trillium. And I have several other pictures here. I've got to get them organized. This one I thought was really pretty. This is not my photograph, but I just thought it was gorgeous. So the echinacea purple coneflower is one we'll do today. We're going to do the lupine. Was really hard. I was trying to figure it out. So there's a lupine here, and this is the cornflower. The buttercups are right here, this right here, and this is a thistle that I found yesterday, and I thought that would be fun, but it's a little tricky, so we're going to have fun today working through these. So one of the things I wanted to just quickly show you, I'm going to move these photographs aside, is that you can use your brush to make petals and leaves, and it's a simple technique, but I want to go over it with you pretty quickly. I have a round brush here, and this is a number 6. It's a Princeton. I like this brush a lot. I have my palette with lots of different colors on here, which I'll be using, but if you don't have one like this and you have a pan set, so these are great to use as well. I have my water, and I have some tissues. I like to have tissues nearby because I have to wipe excess water off of my brush often, and so that's right there for me. So I just want to show you again really quickly what you can do to make petals. And here's a scrap sheet of paper. I've got this brush loaded with a little bit of purple, but I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to press, starting like if the center's here. I can take my brush and apply pressure by and actually use the shape of the brush to make my petal. So I'm taking this paint and pulling down and lifting up. I'm going to do another one. So I'm bringing my brush from this area right here, and I'm pressing down and then lifting up and coming to a point. But you can see how that is beginning to take shape to show the echinacea flower. That's a perfect way to do it. Now, of course, I could make another brush stroke next to the brush stroke that I just made and make it fatter. You can see how I can do that. And actually, I can also add another little bit deeper value of, with the colors, so it starts to get some shadows with it. Okay, so I wanted to show you that. You can also make leaves this way. So I have some sap green. And leaves are the same kind of idea, but you can make a stem and then pull your leaf shapes out using the brush. So there's a little thin leaf, but if I want to make it fatter, I can just bring some paint over to the other side. So you can also make long skinny leaves, and I'm just using my brush, pressing down on it so you can see how the fibers of the brush are going outward to make a thicker leaf. Okay, so that's just a quick little tutorial on that. These are some paintings that I've already done, and this is a lot of practicing went into these actually. So here's one that's already done. I've got the buttercups down here. This was my attempt at the lupine, which was a little tricky. Black-Eyed Susans. Here's another one that's more a little bit more like a little bouquet. Here's another one that kind of turned out kind of cute. So you can see that these flowers are just sort of scattered on the page. And I've got the yellow ones, the black-eyed Susans here in the kind of the center area, but then I've got the purple ones around it. So you can think about how you want to organize your painting. You know, there's many different ways, but what we'll do is we'll start with the taller flowers, in other words, the purple cone flowers, and we'll start with the black-eyed Susans so that those will be a little bit higher on your paper. So think about the taller flowers being up on the top portion of the paper, okay? So we're gonna start with, I think we'll start with the black-eyed Susan. What I did was I drew it, and then what I did was I put them on a piece of paper for you to see it. You're not gonna draw with your marker on your watercolor paper, you're gonna draw with your pencil. And some of you may not even want to draw, and that is perfectly okay. I'm gonna do this in a way that you don't have to draw, but if you want to look at it and kind of get an idea about how these are made and how they're shaped, that can be quite a help. So here's the black-eyed Susan. Now what I do with this one is I start with a little, it's almost like a little cap. Okay, see that? And then I'm gonna, from there, draw the petals coming down. Now we can just do this, like I said, without drawing, but you could draw that little center up on the top portion of your paper, which might be very helpful to kind of know where things are gonna go. But you can just see these petals that are very easy to make, and that's why I showed you how to do it quickly with your brush. Okay, so that's the black-eyed Susan. Here's another view right here where we can see the center in a different view, and then the petals are actually kind of an array from that center. So let's start with that one. We're going to paint it. I'm going to use my lemon yellow, and I'm going to use probably the Hansa yellow, but any yellow that you have will be just fine. We're going to paint the petals first, and then we're going to paint that center, okay? Because we don't want to get too much of that brown or that dark color into the petals. So we're going to start there. All right, so I know you can't see this, but I have drawn the center of my black-eyed Susan right here. So you can see that the taller flowers, like I said, are going to be up towards the top of the page, and then I'll organize my littler, smaller flowers towards the bottom and on the sides, okay? So what I'll do first, I'm going in now with my lemon yellow, and I've got some paint on my brush. Don't want to have too much paint on your brush, but just enough to do the brush stroke. So all I'm going to do is, like I showed you earlier, I'm starting at the base of the head of the flower, and I'm going to bring, I hope I can do this okay, I'm going to bring it down and bring it to a point. So that's going to be happening all around the bottom of this head of the flower, and I might need to move my paper a little. Okay, and I'm lifting up. I can also touch a little bit of the darker yellow to the base of the center. Okay, so there it's starting to shape up a little bit, and then I can do some on this side. Now they're going to be shorter, and then maybe one up here. So you can see that I didn't draw these, I've just made them with my brush. You know, you don't have to be perfect about these, they're just a lot of fun to do. Okay, so that's my first one. Now while it's still damp, and I did not wet these before I did them, I just painted it because it's such a small area that you don't really have to do that. But now I've got my first wash here, and I'm dotting in a little tiny bit of the darker yellow, just right along the edge here. Okay, so I can always go back later and add more details to this. All right, so I'm going to let that dry, and I'm going to move over to this one here that has the view that is kind of just looking down on it. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing. Now I can also go over to another area and work on another one, which I kind of thought it would be good to pop another one over here. So here's my center. And again, it doesn't matter that I made that outlined in yellow, because I'm going to go back later and get it darker because the center's dark. Okay, so let's see here. So I think that's looking pretty good. I'm going to let those dry. Okay, and I could do a couple little buds if I wanted to, and those are, again, I'm just using my brush to press down and lift up. Okay, so there's a couple of buds there. Now the stems, I can move on to the stems, which I'm mixing up a little bit of sap green with a little yellow. And I can think about where I want the stem. I can let it kind of bleed a little. Whoops, that bled too much. That's okay. And I'm going to have to use my tissue to get rid of it. All right. And then I can just bring that down a little bit to make the stem. And I'm taking a little bit deeper green and popping it in here. All right. So we're going to move now on to our purple coneflower. They're quite similar to the Black-Eyed Susan. We're going to start with the center, and then we're going to do the flower petals that are actually sort of drooping down a little bit. So what I've done here is I've drawn sort of like a little dome shape for where they're going to go, a dome shape. And I'm going to use orange to fill that in. Okay, so mixing up a little orange, and I'm going to fill this in.
Real quick, I promise you once we get onto this painting.
There. Okay, so this is going to dry.
Now, the only thing I do have to use, so Sharpie, I use black ink and a brush. That's the only difference. Yeah, you can use Sharpie.
Okay.
I want trust.
So you can see that these are really dark and quite textured. So we'll do that after that initial wash dries. And so now we're going to get, whoops, we're going to get some purple and make the petals, okay? All right, so I'm going to start, and when I do this, it's okay if I get a little bit of it bleeding into my center. That's okay. I'm going to do a little line that comes down here. Just a little line, because there's quite a bit of white space in between these petals. So the line's going to come down, and then I'm going to make the petal. Okay? All right, so we've got 2 of those, and then again, once that's completely dry, I'm going to go back and get the details here. All right, so I think we can work here in these Black-Eyed Susans and do those centers. And I'm mixing up a little bit of brown, and I'm just going to pop some color into the center of this flower. Okay. And it does have a bit of texture, so you know you can dot it in and actually leave some paper white for highlights. Okay. Yeah. Okay, and this one's the same. You can leave a little highlight up at the top. You don't have to fill it all in completely. So that works pretty well. Okay, so a bit of texture, and that's just sort of dotting it in with the tip of my brush. And I got a little bit more orange on my brush here for the center there. Okay, so over here, just the same sort of an idea to get these centers filled in. So it's fun to learn about the different wildflowers. Honestly, I used to know the names of so many of them, and then I kind of forgot, but it's been fun to look them up. And I think I mentioned in the spring, I went to Bunker Park, which is close to where I live in Andover, and it was fun. I just took photographs of a lot of the different wildflowers, and many of them I didn't know what they were, and I still am not 100% sure what they are, but anyway, it was just a lot of fun. And it's been fun going back to that park to see how things have really just, they're wild. I mean, they've just bloomed like crazy. So now I'm doing a little more line work. Okay, a little more line work. I'm pulling from the center color very delicately to just do a little bit of shading here on these flowers. Now you can be really loose with these. You don't have to get very detailed. It's just kind of fun to play around with them and do a little bit of doodling or just playing. let's try moving on. And honestly, I think I told you that the thistles were the hardest ones for me, so I'm going to give it a go. So they're very interesting flowers, and this one is kind of their stalk-like, right? And there are tons of different varieties, and this one was in a big field and there were butterflies. I did miss the butterflies, but I think we'll give it a go. We'll just do a couple of them. I'm going to use cobalt blue, there it is, and a little tiny bit of orange with it to gray it up a bit, and I'll show you what it is. Okay, that's the cobalt blue with a tiny bit of orange. Okay, so with that, I'm going to start with a cone shape, again, similar to the echinacea, a cone shape, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint that in using this mixture. Okay. All right. Now while it's wet, I'm going to pull out some little spikes, I guess you would call them, from this wash right here that I've made with this little shape. So I'm pulling them out from this area here. And I suppose I'm just taking my brush and making some line work here with the very, very tip of my brush. So you want to do this while it's still wet. Okay? So I can get a little bit darker blue, and I'm using a little ultramarine blue, and I'm popping in just a bit more color down towards the bottom. Okay, and then in a little while we'll go back and add some more lines to this once it's dry. Okay, so here's my other one. So I'm going back in just a little bit here in the echinacea, and I'm also going to get those centers finished. I'm sort of going all over the place here. So that would be the dark, the sap green and the purple that would work here for these centers. And they have textural elements to them, and I would just say to make some little lines. So I'm just making some very, very short marks with my brush here. They're a bit intermittent, they're not all the same size. They would be a bit denser, I would say, down here towards the base of the flower. And then a little bit less, they're not as close together up here. So here's a photograph that I have that shows these flowers. They've got 1, 2, 3, 5 petals, and then a circle shape in the center, and then these beautiful rays that come out in a radial manner out from the center here. So we're going to just, you can think about how to make these petals, but I'm going to make some of them towards the base of my paper. Okay, and I'm going to use just a nice rose color. You could also put a little bit of purple with it if you want to, that'd be great. So I'm thinking about probably placing a few of these just right here maybe. That might be pretty right in this area of my paper. And I'm going to leave the center empty. So let's just, you can go ahead and draw a circle if you want to. And just remember that that's the part you want to leave it empty. And from here, I'm making these petals. Now again, they don't have to be perfect. Okay, so let's put another one over here. They're all going to be a little bit different. And it doesn't have to look just like the picture, that's okay. It's kind of like a little heart-shaped petal. So you just want to have enough paint and water on your paper so that you can, you know, get those petals organized. If you're not happy with the shape, you can just change it. It's totally fine. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Now you can't even see the little circle that I drew, so that works pretty good. I can get a little deeper color and pop it towards the center here while it's still wet. Okay, so we want to let that dry a little bit, and let's make another one. Now you could change the color. You could make it a little peachy, and that would be putting a bit of yellow in with your rose color. So let's see, we'll just put one right here. Here's my center. And again, I'll go back and I'll make those yellow a little bit later once it dries. So the centers we'll have to go back and do as soon as they dry. And I think we should just get these little sweet buttercups in because I think they're really fun to make. So here are a few that I did right here. And the buttercup usually has about 5 petals. And here's my photograph. It's kind of cool right here. So they just have the simple shape, very similar to what we were just doing. And then the center is yellow with a little bit of green inside there. So let's put a few of those sprinkled in here. And I'm going back to my lemon yellow. You might need clean water. I'm very fortunate because Tom went and got me clean water. So for my buttercups, I'm thinking about the shape, and I'm going to leave that center empty again. Let's put a couple little ones over here. And I'm going to leave the center empty and just go ahead and paint these little shapes here.